Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. My name is Sivam Velautham. I'm the founder and the president at Velautham 360. Today we have an amazing guest to share his life journey with us. Before that, I want to share a couple of things with you. Velautham 360 is a non-profit organization founded in 2020, and it is based in London, Ontario, Canada. Velautham 360 was born out of seeing a tremendous need and stepping up to provide services to help support and overcome men and boys' life challenges. We are part of International Men's Day. International Men's Day has been serving for over 25 years, and so far, 95 countries around the world joined together and doing various activities regularly. IMD follows six pillars, which is the overall the well-being of boys and men. We follow in the same footstep. Why open up? Men, we do not open our hearts and are not willing to share our matters with anyone. When we keep our emotional challenges within ourselves for a longer time, at some point they will explode and it will affect our health conditions in many ways. That is why we want to create an open space and allow individuals to share their life journey through our platform. We aim to create awareness about life challenges, struggles, overcome ups and downs that our boys and men go through in their lives. There are no limitations with gender, age, nationality, or ethnic groups in sharing your life journey. All walks of life can participate. Our goal is to make a positive impact on someone's life through this program. Open Up is on Sundays at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. We bring an individual to share each show and let them share their life experiences with you. Um, One thing I want to mention that here, it is today is Father's Day, and then I want to wish Father's Day, happy Fathers to everybody. Um, Before I go further, I want to introduce go through our disclaimer. We would like to remind you that Voice of Man 360's mission is always delivered with good faith toward peaceful harmony. The views and opinions expressed in today's episode are all those of our speakers and do not represent Voiceman 360. Our organization engages in discussion forums to offer inspiration and create awareness of the issues of men who wish to overcome their life challenges. We are not providing medical or therapeutic advice. Should you require that type of assistance, we recommend you contact a medical professional immediately. If you have any questions or concerns about today's episodes or any Voiceman 360 content, please email us at info@voiceman360.org. Today we have an amazing guest, like I said, Wayne Rabbitskin, founder of the National Indigenous Men's Gathering, conflict resolution practitioner, focused oriented therapy practitioner. Welcome, Wayne. Thank you for joining.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. It's a great honor to have you. I want to start with, you know, take you back somewhere early lifehood, I would say, maybe in your young age, a survivor of many struggles, challenges in life. Who is Wayne Rabbitskin? What was your turning point in involving in the community works or helping people? Can you take us back?
One of the things I can say today is I have been given a native name, an Indian name. Some people call it. Some people call it a spirit name. And my name is Nadukshkun. What that means is if you see a river, and sometimes the water is low tide, and sometimes it's high tide. And when it becomes high, the water is high, and you don't see a lot of rocks, or you don't see a lot of the rapids are not too too visible, I should say, or it's not too, the water is not traveling, moving fast. So when that happens, when our ancestors used to travel by canoe, and when they used to see this, and they would have their canoes by the rapids, and if they saw this, that the waters had become high, and it was easier for them to move along the downstream, down the river, down the rapids. So when you're about to travel, when you're about to decide to paddle, and when you make that decision, that conscious decision to move forward, that's what it means, Nadukshku. So the elders gave me this name, and before that, I had a name that was I was called Fast Thunderbird, and that's how I was known before. Because back then I just did things, without observing, without my observation, without any kind of judgment on stuff. But now, over the years, when I asked my name again to the elders, that's what they gave me, and that's what they said. You're at the point in your life now where you're able to make these certain observations about where you're going, where you're heading in life, and what kind of decisions and the consequences of those choices that you make. And you are aware of that. You're at that point in your life now, and you watch, and sometimes you watch from the base of the mountain, or you watch your people, and you watch your communities, and you observe all this, and you're at that point now. So this name, you earned it. So I didn't know myself back then about I made a lot of hasty decisions without sitting back and thinking about stuff. And I made a lot of bad choices. And those choices involved addictions, drug addiction, and violence, abuse. I didn't know my role as a First Nations man, or I didn't know my responsibilities, my sacred responsibilities. I had become violent, and I had become abusive towards my mouth, my hands, and my mental, my mind, using my mind to hurt people. So I would use my mouth too. And that's how I had become very disconnected. So over the years, I had become a little more humble, I suppose. So I was given that name, Nadukshkum. And also, where my ancestors are from, it's called Biagun Hiwaj. And what that means is where the spirit awakes. And there was a time when my people were nomadic, lived nomadic lifestyles, and they would travel from camp to camp, or from a territory to a territory, and it always involved seasonal, and also the the caribou, where they migrate, and they would travel with this. And there was a time when my people struggled with starvation, and those were the times. And the story was one of my ancestors, a grandmother, and they were getting ready to lay down to die, and everybody, all the children, all the men, and everybody in that, all my family, all my ancestors, and so she had put a nightline into the ice for fish, and she had a piece of meat to put it on the hook, and she had she could have eaten it, for herself, but she didn't. And the last piece of meat, she decided to just put it on the hook and put it through the ice and leave it there. And she had forgotten about it. And but when they were lying down, to get ready for their deaths, and she remembered, and she thought, I have a nightline, and she decided that to go check it. If she had all that energy, all that little energy that she had left, she mustered enough of it to get up and to walk out and down to the lake and to the ice. And she had pushed aside the snow, and she checked the nightline, and she found it, and she realized there was something there. And all of a sudden, she had felt all this energy rushing back into her body, and she knew there was a fish that she had caught, and she pulled it like that, and sure enough, there was a big lake trout there. And so she took it up to the camp where everybody was lying down, preparing for their deaths, to make that journey to the spirit world. So when finally they heard somebody coming in and somebody dragging something in the snow, and they opened their eyes and they waited, right, with anticipation. So finally, she dragged it in. She dragged in the lake trout into the cabin, into the lodge, and they saw this big lake trout everybody had seen, this lake trout being dragged into, and all of a sudden, their spirits became alive again. They wanted to live. They had the second chance to survive and to live, second chance to life, because of this woman. And everybody woke up, and even the children got excited, and she made, she had made broth for the children, and she put it in a pot, and everybody, had that energy to life again. So that's what that means, where the spirit awakes. And I was told, if you know these things about yourself, your name, and what that means, and also where you come from, where your ancestors come from, and an area, a land of where they come from. And if you know that land, if you are able to step on that land and reconnect with that land, you know who you are, and you know what your purpose is. It becomes more clear of what your purpose is, and you know your identity, your cultural identity. So that's what it means, and those two things. But I'm from the Cree community of Tisasabi, and so it means Tisasabi means the big river. So it's a people from the Great River, and so that's where I'm from. But my ancestors come from a different place. So I didn't know these things back then, because I had struggled with addictions. I struggled with uh, drugs, for so many years. And I had become, at one point in my life, I became homeless. I didn't know where to live. And I lost my job. I lost a really good job. And I had destroyed relationship, my marriage. And I lost my vehicle. I lost my home. So I didn't know. I didn't know who Nadukshum was, who Wayne was.
Thank you for sharing. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. Wayne, there are a couple of things I want to talk to you before go to the next one. I mean, you went through a lot of struggles, especially you lost everything, right? Almost everything, even your identity and everything. But at what point in the last number of years you have been totally changed your direction, and then you are doing a lot of things, and then you are helping other people too? At what point, what happened, what was that turning point, to okay, you know what, enough is enough, I want to change my life, I don't like the way it is, things like that. Can you take us back to the exactly moment, or at least something happened to you, either dreaming, or like somebody influenced you, or reading book, something?
Hmm. Um, I was before. What happened was, I'll tell you a little bit of the story. A little story. When before we moved, we used to live on an island. It's called Fort George, but we had to relocate onto the mainland because of the hydroelectric dams, and that was one of the impacts. It was multi-generational impacts that we had felt in my community, but not just in my community, but the nation itself, our nation. So before that, we were able to travel along the rivers, and along the rivers in the wintertime, there was a lot of father and son relationships, not relationship, but activities that you would see fathers and son, using this river in the winter time, and they would hunt. They would teach their sons uh, their first harvest of the ptarmigan. And it was the same with me and my dad. And we would, I would have. I started off with a slingshot and pellet gun. Eventually, 22, and moving on up like that with a rifle. So I would go with my dad, and during that time, and it was 7 or 8 years old, like any other boy, their foremost relationship with their dad is, I mean, that's the most important relationship that they have. Their friends are, second. Their dad is number one, and it's their hero. So what happened was, I felt I was in on the sled, and my father stopped, and he said, there's a black cloud, a dark cloud over there. And he looked at it, and he said, we have to turn back. We have to go home. And when he turned, and I was on the sled, and I was like having fun, and because I was out there on the land with my dad, and I flipped over the sled, the trailer, and I fell out, and I was still smiling. There was snow on my face, and I was still laughing, right? And my dad kept on going, and I was yelling at him. I thought he would hear me, but he didn't. He kept on going, and I got scared. So finally, while I was chasing my dad's trail, I was walking on this trail. I saw where the snowmobile was going, and eventually the wind started to pick up, and there was snow that was coming in, and you could see that the trail, like the snow blowing over the trail, and I didn't see it anymore. I couldn't see it. I lost the trail, and so he disappeared into the snow, into the bay. And so I kept on going. So finally it was dark, and I decided, what am I going to do? And I was just standing there, and I had to make a decision. I was looking for a place where to have shelter. So finally I saw, the tree line. I went there, and I dug a little hole with snow, and I broke up some saplings. So I put, a little wall and put some boughs on top. I laid them down on the snow, and just to have a little bit of warmth. So I made a trail from there to the ice, to the bay. So I would do that every now and then, and it got hard on my. So finally, I would every now and then I would check around and see if anybody is coming for me. And at one point, and I would listen to it, just listening there, just standing there and listening. And finally, I heard something, and I was in at night. I saw this light coming in, going like that, zigzagging like this, like that. And I knew right away my dad is picking me up, coming there to get me. And finally, he arrived, and he was so happy to see me, and I was so happy to see him too. And he asked me, and he says, "Where where do you want to sit? You want to sit in the front?" And he had still had his trailer with him, and I said, "I'm going to sit in the front." And he said, "Are you scared?" And I said, I went like that, but I was happy. I was happy. I just wanted to be close to him. So the reason why I'm telling you this is because I felt like that was the father-in relationship. That's how fathers should be. That's the role of a father. Um, is when you lose your path in life, and the father's role is to come and get the son and bring him back on the journey, the right path. And that's how I felt throughout the years and throughout my life. I was always chasing my dad, and I had lost along the way. I had lost my his trail, and it was because of what happened to my dad too. He didn't know, he was struggling with alcoholism, and he was violent towards my mom, and I seen a lot of violence at home, and also I seen a lot of partying, and a lot of people get beat up at our home. So there was a lot of fear, there was a lot of stuff going on, and we grew up in that environment, me and my siblings. So I wanted him to tell me, I love you, son. I'm proud of you. But I never heard those things. But after a while, so many years down the road, and I had started to listen, I started to hear about the stories and the testimonies of the restaurant school survivors. And I started to understand. It's like they were telling the story of my dad, what he went through. And he did mention a few times about what happened to him in restaurant school. There was some, abuse, and there was a lot of anger. Right? He had a lot of anger, and it showed up when he was drinking. When he picked up the bottle, it would show up. So I never knew anything about intergenerational trauma, and a lot of those behaviors from my dad, it showed up in me too, through my relationships. And so I lost that connection. I lost that with my dad. And over the years, when I see that violence and also the abandonment that I had felt, there was a time when my dad left my mom, and I felt like he doesn't care. He abandoned me as a son. And I became very bitter, and everything manifested. All that emotion that I had manifested into bitterness, anger, jealousy, a whole bunch of other stuff, and it led to addictions. So one time, I was struggling with drugs, cocaine, and that was the time when I had completely lost myself. I was in this hotel room, and I had closed all the blinds, and I just snorted all my money. I had no money, and I stayed there for 4 days. And finally, there was no more money, and I thought I remember I only had $50 that time, and I looked at it and I said, I wonder if I'm gonna go get another half a gram of cocaine, and I thought to myself, no, I think I have enough. I really do have enough. So when I finally thought that, and I started to cry, and I was just there, and I cried, and all of a sudden I felt this urge, this need to want to talk to my dad. And he was at the same place in a place called Valdor. There was a lot of he had become somewhat homeless too at that time. It was during the time when they were talking about the restaurant school money that was coming in. There was a lot. At that time, I didn't know what was going on with him. And there was a lot of triggers. There was a lot of unresolved trauma that has come back to haunt him. And he ended up, drinking almost his life away. And he was out on the streets. So I was there at that time, and so I was there, and I started calling up God. I was saying, God, if you're here, if you can hear me, I want you to make your presence. I want to feel you. I want to know you. I want to bring you into my life. I was saying all of this, and all of a sudden, all that feeling of being high on cocaine and being drunk, all of a sudden I just kind of left my body. And I became so clear. Everything started to make sense. I don't know, it's just like a big puzzle that was just put together. And I was in the room, and I decided, you know what, I'm going to look for my dad. So I walked around, and I saw him. And they were about to drink. There was a whole bunch of them. They used to have this place where a park where they used to drink, and they had these every now and then there would be somebody that would come in and roll what do you call it, like a caravan or a vehicle that had made sandwiches and coffee for them. The vehicle just left. They bought them coffee, and they put a place. And I asked them, "Hey, I want to talk to my dad if it's okay." And they asked me, they make this place for me with cardboard right beside my dad. And they asked me if I had something to eat, and I said, "No, it's okay." They asked me if I wanted something to drink, and I said, "Okay." And here, these people, they had nothing, and yet they offered me something to a place for me to sit right beside my dad, and a place for me to a thing for me to drink, a hot drink, and something to eat. And they asked me if they want if they want me to just talk to my dad, and I said no, it's okay. You can stay. Whatever I need to say about my dad, you can stay. And I know you guys are taking care of each other, and you guys look at each other like as family. So I sat down with my dad and I talked to him for the first time. No anger, no bitterness, no resentment. And I finally said, you know what, Dad, I've been chasing you all my life. And I think it's time for me to chase me, to find who this man is. And I said to him, you're always going to be my hero. Now, when you fell, when you struggled, I struggled. And when you had pain, when I saw you having pain, I felt the pain. And I'll continue praying for you. And he was crying. And he was crying. He was sitting there and he just cried. And he didn't really say anything. And I told him, I love you. I really do. But I have to live my own life now. I said, I have to be my own man. So when I walked away, and I really believe that one day I'll receive a call telling me that they had found my dad on the streets. And I accepted that. I accepted that will be his fate. That will be, that's how he's going to die on the streets. So when I left, I went back to the hotel. I don't remember leaving there to the hotel. I ended up back at the hotel. But I had this some kind of an energy at the back of my spine all the way to my head. And I felt something here, like electricity, like that. It went up like that. And when I was walking, I felt like I was walking on air. And one time I had told the same story to an elderly lady, and she was listening to me. She's going like that. And finally, when I said, what is that? Why did I feel like that? I said, she says, that's forgiveness. She said, that's what it does. It liberates the soul, she said. And I felt like that. I really, really felt that I had let go of all that anger and resentment that I had towards him. Wanting him to be there. And all that wanting him to be there manifested into a lot of anger and rage inside me. And I just poisoned my spirit, poisoned me. And it poisoned the mind. And I showed that to other people. And I started, all this rage came out in a lot of places. And it's every now and then I would wake up from jail because of rage. So the need for him, to be present in my life emotionally, spiritually, he wasn't there. I just saw him physically. He was just there physically. But he was not there emotionally. He didn't know how. He didn't know how. So yeah, that was the turning point for me. And I said, I'm gonna I need some sort of belief system, some God, creator in my life. There's a lot of things that I don't understand as a man. I need to pray. I need to take the time and pray, connect with myself, connect with God, have that relationship with him, with God. So I started, integrating the changes that I made with God. That was 15 years ago. In September, it'll be 15. September 11th. I remember that day.
So when it's kind of like a personal question, but if you want to answer it, when you look back right now as we're speaking, today's Father's Day as like the you're talking about forgiveness and the healing and everything. When you look back those moments, even your father, all the struggles, abuse, and everything. Like, do you recognize or is two ways forgiveness, like from your point of view, or and also your father's point of view too? Like, do you see the forgiveness on both sides, or you just take it, now I understand, I can see his uh, problems or issues that maybe he couldn't know how to handle it. What do
Mhm.
you think?
When after when I left after that day, and what I did after was I went back to this community that I used to live in, and I decided that I want to clean up, and I cleaned up the place where I stay in, like completely, washed the walls and everything, washed the floors, and what I had done was for us Indigenous people and some parts of First Nations people, we use the sage, the smudge, we call them, right? And it's the significance of that is to ward off any kind of negative energy or to cleanse the place, your house or your body or your energies, you know. So that's what I did. I did that to my whole place downstairs, every corner, every cabinet, and cupboard. I just smudged and cleaned everything and threw away everything. And I did that for 2 days and just cleansed the home. And I threw all the empty bottles, all empty cans, the wine bottles, where I made the lines for to snort my cocaine. I threw everything in there. So finally, on the second day, the second night, and it was raining, and I heard a knock on the door, and I was wondering, it's late. I wonder who it is, And I went down to open the door, and it was my dad standing there, and he's crying. And I asked him, "What are you doing? What are you doing, Dad?" And he says, and he's crying, and he says, "You know what? I really thought about what you said, or what you said about forgiveness, and I want to come home." He said, "I want to come home to your mom." And they were separated for 14 years. And I told him, "Come on in." And we sat down and we talked. For the first time, he opened up and he really talked. And he was just crying. And he said, I want to come home. I want to come home. And I said, "Go home. Go home. You have a place with mom. She's waiting. She's been waiting." I said, "Yeah." And when he came in, and when I brought him into my home, and I made him a bed, and I was putting clean sheets, and I was thinking while he was downstairs, and I was making his bed, and I was thinking, here's this man who caused so much turmoil in my life. Now I needed him, and I'm making a bed, a real clean, comfortable bed for him to sleep in, so he can rest. And I knew that I was forgiving him, that I showed forgiveness had done something to me. It changed me. It changed the way I looked at it. It changed. It's just like something that was blocking my view, my vision. All of a sudden, it just it, 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 I had these old brand new lenses on, and I was making the bed really nice. Finally, I went downstairs and I told him, if he wants to eat. And he said, no, I'm so tired, he said. And he slept. He slept for a day and a half. And he didn't wake up. I waited for him to wake up. Finally, he woke up and I made him a breakfast. And we sat down together and we cried. And I knew there was a lot of things that he didn't have. And I gave him a hug. And he was going like that. Like, you could feel him like he never had that genuine hug, not from anybody. And I wanted to break that cycle, you know. And so I gave him a hug. I told him I love him. And I knew that if I was going to make changes in my life, I had to break the cycle of, the intergenerational trauma. So he said, when I told him, I told him I love him, he was going like that, just mumbling. And so finally he left, and he went home. He and my mom, for some reason, my mom called me about half an hour when he left, and there was a ring, and I picked it up, and it was my mother on the other line, and she asked me, "Have you seen Dad?" And he said, "He's just here. About half an hour ago, he left. What's he doing there?" He said, "Huh?" He said he wants to come home. And she said, "Job." Like, that's an expression of you feel pity to somebody. So he drove back to my mom. And after 14 years, my mom let him back in the house. And she took him back. And on that day, he's been sober ever since. And they completely changed their lives. Well, and I feel sometimes forgiveness, when you show forgiveness to people, it changes. It changes them, not just you. It changes. They don't have to carry those burdens. They may not know how to say it. They may not know how to show it, display it. But when you tell them, when you show it, that you're not bitter towards them, or when you're not angry, when you let go, when you finally let go of that poison, something that poisons your spirit, when you just finally let go of it, it changes people, the people that are close to you. And it goes a long way, I find. Over the years, my dad, I would hug him, I would tell him I love you. And on his 74th birthday, 74, I've been wanting to hear that ever since. And he said, "I love you too, son." He cried for the first time. Yeah.
So, like, when you think back, it's an amazing story. It's a very, very beautiful story that ended in a positive, very positive way, and also getting back on the like family again. We uniting everybody. But remember, they know, but those generations, maybe they don't know how to express, especially men, fathers.
Yeah.
They don't know how to express the love, and even we weren't taught about that. Like nobody told, or even the way we grew. It doesn't matter which ethnic groups. Mostly men. They haven't taught, or they haven't thought about it even. How to express. Nowadays it seems to be very normal, but back those days it is not normal. They don't know, and maybe they feel shy, or they want to hide it, right? Thank you. Actually, appreciate that you sharing those moments, not only from your side, from your father's side, also your from mother's side too, because it's all in one. It's we can see, we can understand, we can sense it. How beautiful it's changed after so many years. and the willingness. The beauty is the willingness uh, to keep forgiveness. Ready to forgive somebody. It is not like you said. You don't want to hold it, the guilty feeling or whatever the feelings, so many years, and then end your life with that. No, you really want to break the silence or end the silence, though. I like that. I love that. So let me ask you this one: the men's gathering, National Indigenous Men's Gathering. Can you tell about that? How did you start? I know you went through a lot of struggles, and then you also worked in a couple of places, and then you started helping a lot of people. What point you made it? Okay, you know what? We need to do something for men. Can you talk about it?
Yeah, it was a lot. A lot had to do with the personal experiences because of my dad, my own dad. It taught me a lot of stuff. It taught me like how far when you hold on, like everything manifests. Let's say, for example, I felt abandoned from my dad. I felt he um, neglected his responsibility as a father to his son towards me. And over the years, it manifested, like I said, into anger, into rage, into bitterness, resentment, and it showed. And when I became adolescent, it showed in my relationship, and I spoke it too. And I had become very disconnected because everything, the anger, the rage, and the resentment, bitterness, it blinded me who I could truly be, or what all the beauty that I could have as a man, and so I looked at that and I wanted some sort of a gathering where men could relearn how to talk about these things, to talk about the anger, the rage, and all these things that even abandonment, even the abuse, even the violence, to talk about it. How can we sit down? And one of the things I did was I started to look at my life and I started to look back on some of the things the turmoil that I caused in other people's lives. And I looked at that and say, how do you correct this? And how do you reconcile with people that they may never want to hear from you again? So what I did first was I wanted to walk. I did a journey from my community to a place called my community is Sisasibi, like I said, to a place called Mysticity. It's about 1,000 kilometers, and so there was 5 men that wanted to join in. So we decided to walk, and what the intent of that walk, the objective was that we would bring a statement, an apology towards women, and how Native men, because of the impacts of the restaurant school, all the impacts of colonization, and with that, there was a lot of violence, internalized depression, internalized violence, a lot of violence, a whole bunch of other stuff, alcoholism. So we saw a lot of that, and I said, you know what? Yes, this happened. Now let's make changes. How do we move forward? How do we stop the blame? How do we, become good men again? How do we do that? And there was a lot of behaviors that we needed to look at. So what we did was we decided to walk and bring that apology. There was a gathering there. There was a women's gathering. There was about 200 women that gathered there, and they heard that we're coming. And but by the time we got there, there was 22 men that had joined in. We walked in to that gathering, and I read the statement of apology to women. I know that statement apology. Um, yes, some women accept it, and that's okay for some women had a hard time listening to it because men did a lot of damage. They did a lot of hurt, but men are hurting too. So we needed to make changes. So from then on, and I said, okay, how do we get the message out? How do we have men engage in a dialogue? How do we begin to talk about all these things that's going on? So finally, I said, I'm going to have a gathering. At first, it was a regional gathering in our area. And finally, I said, no. I said, national men's gathering. And so I got some people together and I sat down with people. So what I did was they wanted to help out. There was a lot of women that came out and wanted to help out and said, Wayne, I feel this is a very important need. And because we were two different people, we operate in a different level, not levels, but rather when men make decisions, it's very analytical and we analyze a lot of stuff. And for when women make decisions, they make it from the spirit, and it's always based on how would that life be impacted or affected. How would that life benefit in this gathering? So, so we came together and said, okay, let's do this. And so we didn't really have, for me, like I didn't really have what I thought was, okay, there's a lot of different nations throughout Canada. And there's teachings that are different. There's cultural differences. For example, for us, it wasn't what do you call it? Our society was not patriarchal. It wasn't matriarchal, though. It was like between. I know there's a word there, but there are societies that are matriarchal, and so there would be different. So what we said is, okay, we'll bring in some of the teachings here at this gathering, what we have here at this National Men's Gathering. So yeah, I know the dynamics will change throughout geographically, as it travels. So the objective was to have a national men's gathering, and to give it to another person or another group of men, and to just leave it and just do whatever they want to do with it, and they organize it or they coordinate it and they plan it and how they see it. And if it evolves into one day, maybe an organization will want to come in and say, hey, can we take over this? If it evolves into that, then so be it. If it evolves into an international gathering, that's good too. However it evolves and grows, and that's the spirit of that men's gathering. So, but what happened was, I asked the grandmothers. I sat down with the grandmothers and with the elderly women, and I said, there's something that I want to do. I wanted to ask them a permission, not permission, but rather their blessing. And they told me, we know, we know what you want to do. We are aware, we've been told. They said that, and they said that we were told there would be a man. They talked about some, like as if some spirit or somebody talking to them. And then they said, we heard there would be a man one day, who would want to start like the voice of men to be heard, and there would be a moment. And so we know, and we give you our blessing, and we're gonna come there. And sure enough, when we had the gathering, they came walking with their skirts. It was so nice. It was so beautiful. And they brought in a shishigon. It's a baby rattle. And they brought in what you call in our way of life is a bundle. And that bundle is supposed to travel with that gathering. And but what they said was it'll stop for a while, but it'll move again. And that's what's happening now. And we had the first men's gathering in my community a couple of years ago. I forget, but anyways, we had the first national men's gathering there. And the second one, we had it at what they had it, the Haudenosaunee people, this is the Ojibwe, sorry, Ojibwe. And so they had in the London area. So there's some nations there. So they had their second one. So it moved north of Timmins and north of London in the city of Timmins. So they picked it up, and that's the third one. So the fourth one, it traveled to Manitoba, Winnipeg, and they say that they already have somebody that will take it on for Saskatchewan, but Manitoba, Winnipeg, hasn't. I haven't heard anything about it yet, or what the status is. I'm told that last year was supposed to, because of the COVID. Last year was supposed to start, but now it's second year. I haven't heard anything, but I'm hoping that it'll pick up. Yeah, because it has a bundle, and I was told that bundle is supposed to grow, and one day it'll have a staff, and one day it'll have a pipe. Yeah. So every gathering there's an item, a secret item that adds to the bundle. Yeah.
See, what I can understand is that people always says, things happen for a reason, right?
Yeah.
So you went through your own personal life journey, and then you seen that you experienced it, and then you witnessed a lot of things, and then at one point you really want to change it, and then not everybody can handle it, but at least some of them actually take it into positive or make a big difference, big step.
Mhm.
So that's what I see in that. And then now you created something, and then it is taking on its own. It is so beautiful, and we never know, right? I mean, we don't have any control, or we don't have to analyze it too much. That's the way I understand that. You create it and then let it go. You don't really have to attach or put too much expectations, things like that. You don't have any control. Just leave it, and then it will take to its own. So the thing is, like, what let's move on to outside of indigenous communities. How, well, not really, but how can non-indigenous communities, or even individuals, organization, help, especially men, and supporting them? What do you think? How can they, as an organization, as an individual, we can help men?
Um, I think it's important that we do build alliances. I think that's important because I think more and more I see a lot of non-indigenous groups or individuals that I see in ceremonies, and That's good. To some extent, it's good. Just as long, I feel sometimes, just as long as it's not pretend that they're native, or they don't they don't exploit the cultural, because we've been through a lot. Indigenous people have been oppressed, and their ceremonies have been outlawed, and those some of the impacts of colonization. And so they need to understand this. They don't need to pretend they don't need to use the ceremonies to exploit them. To the lake and to the ice. And she had pushed aside the snow, and she checked the nightline, and she found it, and she realized there was something there. And all of a sudden, she had felt all this energy rushing back into her body, and she knew there was a fish that she had caught, and she pulled it like that, and sure enough, there was a big lake trout there. And so she took it up to the camp where everybody was lying down, preparing for their deaths, and to make that journey to the spirit world. So when finally they heard somebody coming in, and somebody dragging something in the snow, and they opened their eyes, and they waited, right, with anticipation. I did consultations a few years ago.
They, as an organization, as an individual, we can help men.
I think it's important that we do build alliances. I think that's important, because I think more and more I see a lot of non-Indigenous groups or individuals that I see in ceremonies, and that's good. To some extent, it's good. Just as long, I feel sometimes, just as long as it's not pretend that they're native, or they don't they don't exploit the cultural, because we've been through a lot. Indigenous people have been oppressed, and their ceremonies have been outlawed, and those some of the impacts of colonization. And so they need to understand this. They don't need to pretend they don't need to use the ceremonies to exploit them. And I feel like there's a lot of that going on. And for me personally, I don't really like seeing that. But I don't mind sitting in the sweat lodge with non-natives, and they pray. And some of them, they're very authentic, they're unique, and they're genuine in their love for First Nations, not just First Nations, but all of humanity. And yeah, it's good that they're able to sit there and pray with us, but taking it as their own, that's another thing altogether, I find. And they don't need to go there. And some people are blessed, are blessed by an elder, and some people are traditionally adopted. And I find that that's good, if they're traditionally adopted, but they don't have to pretend. They don't have to pretend they're native. If they're blessed by a lodge or a pipe by their traditionally adopted families, then that's good. But saying that they're native is, you know, or, so that builds um, allegiance, I find. We need to finally say, what, let's sit down, let's talk, let's help each other. There's no need to be, there's, of course, there's disagreements, there's, but, just as long as the dialogue is going, just as long as the reconciliation of going and understanding one another, then that's good, at least the wheels are turning. And the thing I find too is there's a lot of organizations that want to help. And another example is, there's this piece of land that we're given to do men's retreats. We do have a men's retreats, and it was a non-native. He said, I want to help you guys, and this is a piece of land. You can use it. You can use it to heal your own people. And we've been using it for 2 years now. We use the land and the medicines and the ceremonies and some Western ways of counseling and doing therapy sessions for men, especially on the trauma. And we're able to do that. And we've been having them for 2 years. So we're using the land, the medicines, and the ceremonies, the cultural and the heritage and who we are as a people. So we use that to heal our men. So that's one way, an example of a non-Indigenous organization or somebody saying, okay, I'm giving you this, help your people, find a... So that helps a lot. And I see a lot of non-native working there, and they chop wood. You see all this wood for sweat lodge ceremony, and that person never asks for anything, never pretends to be, to be somebody that, he's just genuine. He's So that's one way I find, that's one example. Because I find that we don't have a lot of resources yet for men in general, and we're starting to have a little more. I find, because one of the things I did consultations a few years ago. I was working with this organization, and one of the organizations said to me, why don't you go there and interview people about the violence? And so I went around to communities, and one of the things I found in the consultations, the research that they did, was this is from the universities, 2 universities that hired me. So because I spoke the language, and they wanted somebody that speaks the language to talk to the people. So one of the things I found was there was a lot of men that will never go outside of their territory, out of their communities, of their reservations, because they're comfortable in their communities. And one of the things I found, those people that cause a lot of turmoil, that struggling with addictions and trauma, those are the ones that'll never set foot outside of the community, let alone set foot in the social services. So how do you provide service for them? And one of the things I found, I've been doing the land-based program for 8 years, is the men, the toughest men, the most feared men. When we did the land-based program, and we took them out out on the lake, and I did one-on-one counseling sessions with them. They showed up. They came, and when people looked at this picture, and they were so surprised, and they were happy to see that we don't need, we don't. Sometimes, yes, it's good to send people out to treatment programs, but there are men that will never go. That there are men that will never set foot in the social services. They said, they also said, I don't know how to talk to my spouse. I don't even know how to express myself. I don't even know how to express my emotions. And how do you talk to a woman that's working in the social services? How do you do that? So when we had these land-based programs for men, a lot of men registered, a lot. And over here, just near Quebec City, we have one. And the first ones we wanted to, when we put out a registration, there was over 30 men from all over the province of Quebec wanted to come to our program. And we only had to take 16. So there's a lot more calling and saying, I wanna go to your program. So these land-based programs are so good. So these are some of the areas I find that are very, very beneficial when we were given that land by an Indigenous individual actually that owns that. So there's some organizations out there that want to fund these kind of projects, and that's really good. There's a lot of funding out there, but the thing about funding too is there's organizations that almost look like they're native organizations, but they're not really native organizations, but their content may be, and they have access to these funds that would not belong, but rather another exploitation, right? This the money, and so that would go towards Native people, like to find their healing, to do prevention, intervention, and all this. So there's organizations out there now that are, it's like they're registering them as Native organizations, and sometimes what I found was there are organizations too that have a lot of non-natives advocating for First Nations communities that never set foot, or they don't know how the dynamics of the communities and what they went through, and so they advocate for us, and they don't know us, or they don't know the communities or the people or the land. Yeah. So
So from my understanding is that creating a space, even giving a space, accepting and recognizing your situation, especially countries like with the multicultural, very, very diverse country, right? As an immigrant myself, when we arrived, we don't have any idea about the Indigenous or First Nation communities. But over the years, especially after running this organization, part of this organization, I started learning a lot of information, and it's sometimes it's overwhelming. At the same time, that like you said, end of the day, we are all of us are human beings, and then how we can help, how we can understand their situation, your struggles and pain and things like that, right? Absolutely. It doesn't matter.
Sorry about that. One of the things I think would be very good is you and me. We're sitting here and we're talking, and for me, like one day I want to be able to see like a gathering of men, at a national level, you know, to talk about, what we're talking about, the very depths of traumas of men, the hurts of men, and how do you make these changes, positive changes, tangible changes that you can see, that you can hear in the men, and that you can see them, you can feel them, and one day I want to see that, and that's, I think, we all need. I think we have commonalities of you and me. We feel pain, we feel trauma, we feel, you know we grieve. We have all these emotions. That's a very common thing for men. And how do you, because of the stigma in the society, we suppress a lot of stuff. Men suppress and they want to be tough. Men don't cry. We're supposed to be big men, but a lot of that comes with consequences, and sometimes with those emotions that we keep inside ourselves, we become sick. It can make us sick. If we keep them too long, and studies have shown that already. And a whole bunch of physical issues, mental issues, even that stem from that. Manifest eventually through that. So one day, you sitting over there, and we could sit, in a big conference one day and say, what, let's talk. You know, a whole bunch of
Absolutely. We had to start somewhere, right? See,
yes,
remember you came up with that idea, national. Okay, you know what? We had to do something. The same thing I thought myself. I had to do something, and then that's how, you know, individual comes up with an idea and then start to work on that. It will take to the next step. Like, you know, you or I, we don't have to worry too much, but as long as it's genuine interest, or um, genuinely you really want to help others, especially men, what we are talking about. There are people out there, they will help us. I believe in the universe. Universe will take it to the next level, though. We don't know who is going to help us, who will be on the next person take to the next level. That's up to the creator. So the universe will take it. No, don't worry. We don't have to worry too much about that. But the beauty that you are talking about, a lot of women are willing to help. That's very true. The reason is that we are seeing here too, in our platform, through our platform, a lot of people, even behind the scene, some of them, they don't want to come at the front, but they really want to help talk about men's issues. End of the day, the most suffering people is the woman, so they have to speak out. And the other thing is that when we talk about either men's issues or women's issues, we cannot just have one gender and then talk about their issues. So we need to have all genders nowadays, and then discuss, have an open talk, open discussion, understand from each point of view, and then see how we can help each other, right? We cannot just have one gender empowering and then leave other gender alone. It cannot be. It shouldn't be, right? So I believe it will take, and then I'm very, very confident. It is not too far, or it won't be 5, 10 years. In the next, I mean, in the near future, we can see at least a couple of provinces or cities. We can see a national men's gathering. So it will take. It will come back. It will come back. I'm pretty sure. Um, so I just wanted to take a quick minute or so. I do have a few announcements, and then I will come back to you. Okay, I'll come back to you. So we do have a special panel discussion to recognize National Indigenous Peoples Day, which is going to be the June 21st. But our panel discussion will be on June 28th, Saturday, from 7 to 9 p.m. The topic will be building bridges, fostering positive relationships with indigenous communities. That's our topic. And then regular events, podcasts open up on Sundays as you are watching right now, 7 p.m. Eastern Time. And then Woody Tamil Live Talk Show is on Sundays at 8 a.m. Eastern Time. And then monthly men's group meeting only for men by men. It is on the second Saturday of every month through Zoom, 7 to 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Um, Please find the Zoom link on our Facebook page or group. Join through Zoom. You had to register for the first time. And also, there are no limitations to gender, age, nationality, or ethnic groups. All walks of life can participate in any of our shows. If you want to be a guest on any of our shows or willing to be part of any of our show organization and helping directly or indirectly, please reach out to us. We would love to work with individuals, professionals, experts, community organizations, associations, corporations, government officials, and businesses. Phone number is 226 289 8784. 226 289 8784. Email address is info@voiceomen360.org. Website is www.voiceomen360.org. Social media, Facebook, we have group and page. Join our Facebook group so you can see daily or weekly regular activities. And also other social media platforms: Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube, of course. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel. We have done over 500 episodes on various topics, so you can go and then watch it. Please join and then subscribe to our YouTube channel. Coming back to Wayne. So, Father's Day. What is a message for fathers out there?
Um, I think like I don't have children of my own. I'm not a biologically, but I've helped raise children. I have stepdaughters, and I think it's important for me to set aside a lot of the indifferences. I find like there's also my pride gets in the way of being close to them, and I think that there's a lot of stuff men have. Um, I just want to, like I said, the real victim sometimes is always the children. And, what happened to my dad, I didn't know. I didn't understand it. He didn't understand it himself. He didn't know the skills, the parenting skills, because he was taken away at 6 years old off to restaurant school from the comforts of his loving arms of his dad or comforts of his mom, all those teachings that a father and son he could have had with his own dad, and it was not a fault of his own in so many ways. So of course he got angry. Of course he was hurt. Of course he had trauma. Of course he had all these things. He carried all this stuff. But I decided one day, you know what? I'm not going to carry those things. I don't want to carry those things. And I don't want to show those things to anybody anymore, And those are my dad's. I'm going to leave them to him. So I think we have a role. We have a very, important, sacred role and responsibility to say, you know what, I don't want to carry this burden of resenting my dad or having this rage inside me. It's just going to destroy everybody else around me. And look, I don't blame my dad anymore. I don't carry that. But it got me to places that I didn't want to be. We had become homeless, like I struggled with addictions, alcohol and drugs and cocaine especially. It completely almost destroyed me. And so we need to resolve those issues that we have, as a father. We need to look at them. We really need to look within ourselves and say, what kind of changes, what kind of behaviors, what kind of stuff that are affecting people around me, what's hurting them and what's hurting me, So I just want to encourage men out there, the fathers, to look at that and say, what, if we change, it goes a long way. It really does. It really, really does. It makes changes, to, the children don't have to become victims of our own demons. So I want to encourage men out there that, look within and happy Father's Day.
Absolutely, because June is Men's Mental Health Month too. So self-care is number one priority, important thing that they have to take care of, especially fathers. They are running around with all duties and responsibilities, things like that, but they don't take care of themselves. They wouldn't have, or they don't even think about that, at any time. So it is very important, at least just a few minutes, for yourself, like Wayne said, within yourself, take a look at it and then try to reconnect and then see, live your life. Self-care is very, very important. And then even I read another book, and then the high rate of suicide, that it's number one killing, especially men around the world, 78 to 80%. But at the same time, within indigenous communities too, it's one of the highest ratio, especially men too. So we also want to talk about that, but we will do it some other times. But why I'm saying is here, because of the month June is the Men's Mental Health Month. So we want to send out the message as much as you can. One is yourself and also the people around you. Just to ask a question, how are you? Just to check with them, what's going on, how's everything. We never know. By just asking one or two questions can save at least some lives. That's our request. So lastly, Wayne, what does the National Indigenous Peoples Day mean to you personally and the entire Indigenous communities across Canada?
I think it's good that we're being acknowledged that we exist. We're here. We're not going anywhere. We're not going anywhere anytime soon. So there's a lot to be said about that. I think one word that comes to mind is resilience. When I hear that, and if you look at the numbers, how many people died, how many people were murdered, and how many people, were never found, or even enlisted in school that never came home. I mean, the children. And so, there's a lot of deep hurt there, but at the same time, there's a lot of celebration that could be done too. And I think for me personally, um, the celebration part outweighs any past hurt. And I think that's, for me personally, that's one way of me moving forward. And I need to stop blaming. Um, yes, the history, the dark legacy of our summer schools happened. The intergenerational trauma, yes, it happened. But I think in some ways we need to look at that and say, we need to find healing. We need to resolve. We need to find a way to live and to exist, coexist, and we've been doing that. And to me, for my dad to tell me, I love you at 74 years old, that's a big celebration to me. A lot of Indigenous fathers and sons, especially fathers, they don't know how to say it. They don't know how to express and show it. So, and that shows me that we're moving forward and we're moving along. It takes time, takes a little bit of pain, takes a little bit of expressing those pains, So I think it's good that the rest of, say for example, I'm sitting across, somebody that, is from another, nationality, and that's really good. That's an acknowledgement. That's a recognition, and somebody reaching out to a First Nations man such as yourself and saying, "Okay, I want to talk to this man. I want to know about this man. I want to know their culture. I want to listen." So, if we continue to have that dialogue, then that's what we need. That's reconciliation to me. That's what it looks like. Yeah.
One of the positive thing that happened or recently we can see that after this, the survival or the survey from the residential school, the schools actually, a lot of people started to take Indigenous courses programs at university levels, and he started to understand, study, learn more and more, go deeper. Even some of them, they want to do a PhD, or some of them. It's a good progress, good positive changes. But at the same time, when we look at back, like how many lives we lost, it is very, very unfortunate. At the same time, the same thing like you said, it's way of understanding, way of creating a space, and then recognizing somebody out there, and then willingness. Not only non-Indigenous people are willing to listen, but at the same time, the Indigenous communities are willing to share, come out, and then openly try to speak, try to share their emotions. That's it's a hard part, but at the same time that we need to heal, we need to recover. I see that especially a lot of men out there. I can sense, I can feel that we will try to help as much as possible with open hands, open hearts. That's our basic request from as a non-indigenous non-indigenous communities and individuals. Anything out there that you can consider, you can work with communities. It is a time to look back and then see how we can help each other, right? I really appreciate Wayne for joining and then sharing a lot of things we talk about today. Of course, we will bring you back on the panel discussion, and then we will talk more. We need to talk more. This is the way. It's a just not the one stop or one time. It's going to be ongoing dialogue, ongoing discussion, how we can help each other, and then how we can reach out more men, and then help them. How we can serve them uh, in order to save some lives, though. Right? Thank you. Ben. Thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks.
And thank you for having me. Appreciate it. Yeah.
Yeah. So far, Wayne Rabbitskin he shared his life journey with us, and then today, people, it is our genuine request, humble request that, of course, you're going to take at least some of the keywords or some of the lines or the whole story from Wayne. At the same time, you have to please share with other people, share with your friends, share with other people. That's the way we can reach out more people. It is possible that we can do more and more. We can reach out more people. We can serve more people. We can help more people. We can save more lives. Thank you, everyone, for watching, and then see you next time. Thank you.